Hey everyone, in this video, we're going to talk about the latest situation with the tariffs because we're already down to the last 3 days. July 9th marks the 90th day, which should be today. The 90-day deadline is here, so what's going to happen with the trade war? What is Donald Trump going to do? And which countries are the most crucial in all this? So, what strategies does the US have? Oh, what a deal! On July 6th, U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent said that Donald Trump has already signed the letter. He has already signed the letter. If at least 100 countries do not accept the tariff agreement with the United States, then the tariff rates will return to the levels of April 2nd, Liberation Day. They notified 100 countries before the 9th, and these letters were sent out one after another. But actually, this isn't that important. Out of more than 180 countries in the world, only about 100 have trade with the United States, which is actually quite few. Those countries don't really care, because they can't even sell anything to the US anyway. Let me emphasize that. And as for the new tariffs, they will take effect on August 1st. They'll send you a letter, and actually, you still have a chance to appeal because the tariffs will start on August 1st. It's made very clear to everyone, if there's no agreement, then what happens? Starting from August 1st, the new tariffs will be imposed. This is basically the final threat, the biggest scare tactic they can use. Especially for those countries that are deadlocked, this actually gives them an incentive to get things settled within this month. This is the ultimate threat, the final warning. On July 6th, Donald Trump told reporters that in the coming days, there will be both letters and agreements sent out, up to 15 letters targeting the main trade partners, to be mailed on July 8th and 9th. If things can't be settled in those 2 days, that's it. Actually, his main trade partners are just under 20 countries. So, if these trade partners still don't have a trade framework in place within those 2 days, he'll send them a letter to intimidate them. Commerce Secretary Lunick said that even after the tariffs on August 1st and July 9th, those trade partners still have some breathing room and can still negotiate. So what does this mean? I can put it this way. It's like when you're shopping and the seller refuses to give you a discount, so you turn around and walk away to see if they'll call you back. If they don't call you back, will you end up turning back yourself? I think by July 9th, most countries will have finished, either by receiving the letter or by reaching an agreement. Either way, the notifications about tariffs being raised will start being sent out from today, scaring people as they go out. On July 6th, Vest was interviewed and said that tariffs would be directly set for 100 or so smaller countries, most of which have never even negotiated with the US. Those small countries don't even know how to negotiate, so is this just to scare them? The US government has already stated before that if other countries aren't sincere about negotiating with the US, they'll just directly impose these reciprocal tariffs, right? As for those small countries, it's all 10%. This 10% is the minimum charge, kind of like when you eat at a restaurant and there's a minimum service fee. White House National Economic Advisor Hassett said that if you watch the news this week, you'll know which countries the US has sent tariff notifications to. Both small and major trading partners will get them. If you're a small country and get hit with the 10%, it's no big deal. But if you're a major partner and you're shocked by this, and you're currently in a dispute with the US, then you'd better know you still have 20 days to make concessions. Hassett emphasized that a good trade agreement can help small trading partners become big ones. So is this the carrot being offered? What it means? If you want to do more business with the US and you have a good attitude, I'll negotiate a trade agreement, and then you'll grow bigger. India got scared. Competing countries use this to negotiate with the US, but small countries haven't sought negotiations. America's main trading partners all have tariffs much higher than 10%. Right now, with the UK it's 10%, but with China it's 30% plus another 30%. Originally, it was 20% for China, so that's 50% in total. But the newly added tariffs are 30 on top of the previous 20, which have already been absorbed. That means, because China has to pay an extra 20% in tariffs, the supply chain has already adjusted. So the new impact comes from this additional 30%. Vietnam is at 20%, but actually, it's really just the 5 main countries that matter most. The top 5 most important countries are, first, Canada, China, Mexico, the European Union, and Vietnam. These are the 5 most overall important ones. Next, on the second tier of importance, we have Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Indonesia, and Thailand, and then the UK. He said, "Oh, so it turns out they've already reached an agreement with Cambodia." The first batch of tariff notifications will be sent to the relevant 12 countries on July 7th. We don't know which countries have different amounts and slight differences in tariffs, according to the statement. Now, those 100 countries, they're not announcing them yet. In the end, when they do announce, they'll only release information about the more significant trade barriers, meaning those among the top 20 trading partners. Those are basically meant to intimidate you into giving in. The U.S. reciprocal tariffs grace period is down to 9 days as of July 9th. Japan, South Korea, India, and the EU are all scrambling to buy time, trying to quickly wrap up negotiations, or extend the agreement, either settle things, or if not, just extend it. So how long will they extend it for now? About 2 months. Besant said that the US and the EU have reached a technical consensus in their negotiations, and the EU accounts for 1/3 of the US's total trade, making it a key player. Let me tell you, these are the EU, China, Vietnam, these top 5 countries, plus Canada and Mexico, making 6 in total. Together, they account for about 2/3, or roughly 66% of US imports. The trade agreement with India, which was originally expected to be completed smoothly, has hit a snag recently as India has taken a tougher stance and is now threatening retaliatory tariffs. This is because the US has raised tariffs on automobiles. The US raising tariffs on automobiles isn't really important to India. Since India doesn't export cars, it's not like Indian cars can be sold in the US anyway. That's not the real issue. The real problem is that India refuses to make concessions on dairy and agricultural products. This is something Modi's government just won't budge on, because if they do, it could cost them the election. So, if China were to impose tariffs on India's weaker products, or increase tariffs on these kinds of things, then India would just turn around and raise tariffs on American goods in response. They've already filed with the World Trade Organization, preparing to retaliate against the US tariffs, so everyone is on edge for now. Japanese Prime Minister Ishiba has stated that Japan will firmly defend its national interests and will do its best to respond to all possible tariff scenarios. Chief Trade Representative Akazawa Yoshimasa exchanged views with the Minister of Commerce. Japan is facing a major issue, the July 20th House of Councillors election. Right now, they absolutely can't afford any missteps, especially on 3 key issues. The first one Japan is particularly focused on is the automobile safety regulations, specifically the safety standards for cars. The regulations, that is, the safety standards. One of them is the food safety standards. These are things that Japan finds very hard to compromise on. Especially before the upper house elections, South Korea wants to extend the negotiation period to protect its own automobile industry. You know, Hyundai and Kia. They sell a lot of cars to the US, but in America, they only have small factories, and it'll be a long time before they can expand to the scale of Toyota and Honda. So, that's their main concern. For semiconductors, you can't not buy them. For smartphones, you can't not sell them, right? Yeah, Vietnam has already sorted it out, so if you export from Vietnam, you just pay a 20% tariff. A lot of products can go from Vietnam, but cars can't be exported from Vietnam. This Hyundai-Kia group is one of the world's top 3 car manufacturers, producing about 1 million cars every year. Shipping from South Korea to the US, now that's a killer. Lee Jae-myung's national security advisor, Wai Sung-rak, is heading to Washington to discuss US-Korea issues, hoping to extend the tariff exemption period. White House Council of Economic Advisors Chair, Milan, revealed that if you're sincere in negotiating, then it's possible to postpone it. That means you need to show some sincerity first. If you start off asking for the sky and then try to bargain down, with no sincerity at all, then of course it won't work. Everyone needs to show a bit of good faith, but there are some things they just can't back down on. The US is using this final deadline to put pressure on you all. I heard in Milan that the negotiations between India and Europe have had some positive signals. Now, I think this India-Europe-Korea, and also the Indonesia-Taiwan direct agreement. Donald Trump will decide later this week whether each country has done its best to secure access to the US market. For a few countries, at most, it's just a 2-month extension, and there won't be any immediate imposition of high tariffs. Bloomberg economists predict that by July 9th, countries that still haven't reached a structural agreement with the US but show sincerity may get a 2-month extension. Economists expect that 35 economies will be subject to full reciprocal tariffs set unilaterally by the US. In other words, on that so-called liberation date, the tariffs mentioned will be put into effect. If there's no sincerity, they'll impose even higher penalties, raising the tariffs further. Previously, Taiwan was seen as having made the most constructive progress with the US, but no details have been disclosed. Taiwan's biggest issue is with agricultural products because there are a lot of voters involved in agriculture. Sacrificing Taiwan's auto industry isn't really an issue. Other things aren't a problem either. What American products can actually be sold in Taiwan? It's really just this one. How many cars can you actually sell? That's not the real issue. As for agricultural products, that's what the business representative said. The final and most crucial outcome of the negotiations will be communicated by the US side. I believe an agreement will be reached. All right, let's talk about Thailand. Pichai stated that the latest proposal aims to increase bilateral trade between Thailand and the US, reducing Thailand's $46 billion trade surplus with the US by 70% within 5 years. Originally, they said the reduction would take place over 10 years, but now they've promised to cut $46 billion per year within 5 years. Thailand plans to submit a revised proposal before the US imposes 90-day tariffs on July 9th, aiming for the best possible 10%. Well, I think Taiwan is at 15%, somewhere between 10 and 20%, which is still acceptable. Did Thailand promise to buy much energy and Boeing planes? Over the next 20 years, they'll buy 200,000 tons of LNG from Alaska annually, and Thai Airways will buy 80 Boeing planes yearly. So that's Thailand buying LPG and planes, and this is Cambodia's 80% trade framework. Originally, Cambodia had a 49% reciprocal tariff. Global investors are becoming more and more calm about the upcoming reciprocal tariffs from the US. Donald Trump announced new tariffs ranging from 10 to 70%, but the market's reaction is getting smaller and smaller. That is, actually, the more experience you have with this, the less you react. It's just human nature. It's a built-in mechanism. Investors already have a stronger psychological defense. That's the so-called investment reward from the US. The market believes there is flexibility in the implementation of the policy, and the worst-case scenario has already been fully priced in. They've already anticipated it. At most, there will be a price adjustment, and this price adjustment, it's about 2%. In fact, in the short term, this will definitely be reflected in the CBI, which makes it difficult for you to cut interest rates. The investment manager of the fixed income department in Singapore. He uses aftershocks as a metaphor for the current tariff impact, saying that professional investors are balancing between hedging and chasing returns, scared yet greedy, greedy yet scared. Boston's investment award market is digesting tariffs as high as 35 to 40%, expecting that in the end, it will settle at around a 10% general tariff rate. 10%. That's impossible. So for China, it's already an extra 30%. For Mexico and Canada, is it a full 25% increase? As for the EU, I think it's about 15%. If you average it out, the result might be around 15 to 20%. The US dollar had its worst performance since 1973 in the first half of this year. Honestly, I haven't seen it drop 10% this quickly since the Nixon era. Since April, it's already dropped a total of 6.6%. The US dollar's safe haven status has weakened, but what about investors? Have they gotten used to Donald Trump? When he talks, treat it like he's singing. Let's look at the US dollar index, 97. That's serious. Earlier on, we talked about it when it was still at 99, 98, and now it's dropped another percent to 97. At its highest, don't forget, it was at 110 back in January. From 110 in January down to 97, that's a drop of 13, which is 11.7%.